For years,
being
whispers
paranoid,
about Prince
taking
Harry's possible return
coincidences
to
and
royal
turning them
life
into
were brushed off as
conspiracies
fantasy.
because follows fills every
But this
corner of the
time,
room. Harry's just
something
standing
feels
there,
different.
and something
A single
inside him,
phrase
every
uttered by
connection
Harry
traces back to
himself
that
has
one
sent
person.
Buckingham
And
Palace
living like
spiraling
this,
into chaos.
you don't
What
immediately
began
get
as a
official
quiet rumor
representatives
has
instantly.
exploded into a
By simply
full-blown
releasing
royal
the
storm,
documentation that would
tearing open
Harry
old
was
wounds
far more
and forcing the
interested in
family to
silencing
confront
questions
what
than
they've long
answering
tried
them.
to bury.
Meanwhile, where was
Betrayal,
Meghan? Harry's
regret,
sitting there in the
and an
dark,
unhealed
laptop
past.
glowing, and
Before
suddenly
we go
everything
deeper
looks
into what this
different.
really
Every
means for
moment
the
that
royal
felt
family,
she
make
was
sure to
becoming
subscribe
someone
so you
people
don't miss a single
recognized.
update.
Someone worth
It
knowing,
started
someone
with
worth
an
inviting.
offhand
But here's
comment,
what people
a
who
few
watched
words
this
delivered
was
in an
shakier
interview
than
that
he
was never
thought.
meant to
They feel
ignite the
bad for
world.
him. See him as someone who
Yet,
got played.
within
The other
hours,
half thinks
those
he's
words
spiral.
became
He
the
can't
spark
handle
that
the
set
pressure.
the monarchy
They
ablaze.
see someone
No
destroying
door is ever
something
truly
good because he
closed,
can't get
Harry
out of
had
his
said
own
when
head.
asked if he'd
But
ever
here's
consider
what
returning to the
constant
royal
second
fold.
guessing of every memory,
The interviewer
every
moved
moment
on
now.
quickly,
And
unaware of the
uncertainty
storm
when you're
brewing
living it
behind
every day
those 7
fully
simple
know.
words.
But one
But
thing's
to the royal
absolutely certain.
household,
This story
they weren't
isn't
harmless.
for centuries. Every
They were a
royal birth has
declaration,
followed the
a
same
coded message
established
that hinted at
rules,
something
because
deeper,
protocol,
something they
clear
thought was long
documentation
buried
proving
beneath
these
years
births
of
happen
resentment
exactly
and
as claimed
silence.
meant. The monarchy
Behind palace
survives
walls,
on one thing:
aides scrambled
legitimate
to interpret
timelines
the
that
meaning.
shifted like
Some believed it
quicksand
was a
whenever
plea for
someone tried pinning down
reconciliation,
actual facts.
others feared
Within
it was a
minutes,
carefully
hashtags were
orchestrated
climbing the
strategy.
trending lists.
For the
Clips
press,
were being
it
shared
was
at
gold.
lightning speed.
Headlines
And suddenly
screamed of a royal
millions of
comeback.
people were asking
Tabloids
the
spun
same
stories of
questions they've
secret
been
talks and
secretly
emotional
wondering
phone
about for
calls,
years.
and the internet
Because
erupted with theories.
understanding the proper protocol
Had Harry
makes
already
the
spoken to his father?
protecting the monarchy's
Was there a plan in
legitimacy.
motion? Or was this simply
Health
Harry's way of
status,
reminding the
professional
world that his
photographers
royal blood
controlling
still
every
ran deep,
frame
no
instead
matter
of
how far
standard
he had
press
travelled
pool
from the
coverage.
institution that raised
This
him?
comes from a
Those
couple
close
who
to the
spent
family
years
say the
calling out
reaction
the royal
inside the
family
palace
for
was
lack of
instant and
transparency
intense.
approach.
Senior
They
staff
made
were
everything
reportedly
as
stunned,
private,
unsure how
controlled,
to
and
advise the king,
mysterious as humanly
who
possible.
himself
Now we
was
need to
said to be
talk about
caught
why
between
Harry's
emotion and
reaction was
duty.
so
The walls
extreme.
of Buckingham
Because
Palace,
once you understand
once
what's
symbols
really
of control and
the Netflix
protocol,
money,
now echoed with
speaking
uncertainty.
fees, the book deals,
One aide
the
confided to a
A-list, serious
journalist that the
questions
king had
start
taken a
swirling
long
about
walk
whether
through the
their children
gardens
are
after
actually
hearing the
royal at
interview.
all.
He
That
didn't speak
entire
much,
brand questionable.
only muttered,
That's
"He
why
knows
Harry's
what he's doing."
response looked trapped.
It
for
was a
Harry.
phrase that carried
If
both
he-
admiration
the
and
message couldn't have been
apprehension,
clearer if they'd
as
put
though
up
Charles
billboards.
recognized
Harry
his
was
son's
on his
strategic
own.
brilliance
Even the palace
and
inside,
feared the emotional
only to
reckoning it
apparently
might bring.
operate in complete
Meanwhile,
secrecy
William's
when it
circle
suited
moved
him.
quickly,
Was
pushing for
beyond.
calm
Harry
and
was
silence,
reportedly spending
wary of
enormous amounts
reigniting
of
old
time.
wounds
They'd
in the
spent
public eye.
years successfully
But
establishing
silence,
themselves
as history had
people
shown,
who'd been
only
treated
made the whispers
unfairly,
louder.
protecting the
The media
monarchy's
began drawing
legitimacy.
lines between recent
So
royal
here's a
absences
question
and
that's been
Harry's
eating at people
enigmatic
for
comment.
years. Was
Every
Prince Harry's
cancelled event,
fairy tale
every
romance
delayed appearance
actually
became
live his
part of a
life?
larger
The usual
narrative
stuff
that
brothers
something
fight
was
about when
shifting
one
within the
thinks he
monarchy,
knows better. But
something
now
no
it's
one
about
could quite
money.
explain.
How did she afford all of this?
For
Because
many,
let's be
the
real,
memory
the
of Harry's
lifestyle she was
departure
living before
still
they met
lingered
had a
like an
recurring
open
role
scar.
that eventually became main.
The day he and Meghan walked away in 2020 wasn't just about stepping back from royal duties, it was about shattering centuries of tradition, exposing cracks in a dynasty that had always thrived on unity. The image of him leaving Britain, his head bowed but his will unbroken, became a symbol of defiance. Now, with his latest words, that defiance had evolved into something more dangerous, a challenge cloaked in calm, a truth too sharp to ignore. Behind the headlines, subtle movements began to unfold. Reports emerged of private calls exchanged between Harry and the King, quiet, hesitant conversations that carried the weight of unspoken apologies. No one knew what was said, but sources claimed the tone was softer than it had been in years. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet. But it was recognition, a fragile acknowledgement that despite everything, they were still bound by something deeper than the crown, blood. Still, not everyone inside the palace welcomed the idea of Harry's return. Some feared his presence would reopen wounds that had barely begun to heal. Others believed it could be the monarchy's chance at redemption, a public symbol of forgiveness and unity in a time when the institution was losing its human touch. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Harry had shifted the ground beneath the monarchy once again, and this time, no one could control where the cracks would lead. As the world speculated and the family retreated further into secrecy, the story grew larger than the statement itself. It became a mirror reflecting the monarchy's most painful truths, the fractures it had hidden, and the emotional debts still unpaid. Harry's words weren't just a spark. They were a reminder that the past never stays buried for long, not in the royal family, and certainly not for the son who walked away. But beneath the public frenzy lies a deeper truth, one that even Harry's closest allies never expected him to confront again. When Harry's cryptic message went viral, it wasn't just a throwaway line. It was a signal, a spark that reignited buried conversations inside the royal corridors. Behind palace walls, senior aides were said to be in shock, while others feared what this might mean for Camilla, William, and Catherine. Because this time, Harry wasn't asking for forgiveness, he was demanding acknowledgement. What had started as a single remark in a brief interview suddenly became the most dissected sentence in the world. When Harry referred to unfinished royal business, it was as if he had cracked open a door the monarchy had spent years trying to seal shut. He didn't sound bitter or defensive. His tone was steady, deliberate, and hauntingly calm, the kind of calm that carried unspoken pain. To those who listened closely, it wasn't just a comment about duty. It was a message to his family, one they could not afford to ignore. He spoke of truth, of closure, and of what he called a conversation that never truly ended. It was the comme ça stand kind of phrasing that made even seasoned reporters pause, knowing something deeper was hidden between the lines. Within hours, the world divided. Supporters hailed Harry's courage, claiming his composure revealed maturity and purpose. Critics accused him of strategic timing, suggesting he was manipulating sympathy at a moment when the royal family faced fragile unity. Yet, those closest to the monarchy knew that this was far more than a publicity storm, it was personal. William's aides were reportedly blindsided, describing the Duke's comments as an unexpected reopening of healed scars. Charles's advisors scrambled to prepare responses, aware that silence could be mistaken for guilt, but words could spark a fire they weren't ready to face. Inside Clarence House, reports emerged of a tense atmosphere. The king, already juggling health concerns and public scrutiny, had been quietly advised not to respond. But those who know him said he was hurt, more than angry hurt, that his son still spoke in riddles, instead of reaching out directly. Behind closed doors, one source claimed Charles asked, "Why does he speak to the world before he speaks to me?" It was a rare moment of vulnerability, one that revealed a father torn between royal restraint and paternal despair. Camilla, however, was less forgiving. Her reaction was described by insiders as seething. The timing of Harry's comments coming just before a major royal engagement was seen as deliberate sabotage. She reportedly told close confidants that Harry was testing the waters, not for reconciliation, but for control of the narrative. Those words, whispered in frustration, echoed through the palace, creating new tension between Camilla and Charles, and deepening the invisible divide between the king's heart and the crown's duty. Catherine's response was a stark contrast. Friends described her reaction as quiet, almost reflective. She saw through the noise, recognizing not defiance, but pain. She reportedly told a confidant, "He's not finished with them, and they're not finished with him." Her empathy stood out in a sea of royal defensiveness, though she knew that sympathy alone could not heal a rift this deep. The brothers had built walls of pride and silence so high that even love struggled to climb them. Meanwhile, the public's obsession grew uncontrollable. Debates raged across television screens and social media timelines. Was Harry preparing to return, or was he laying the foundation for another explosive revelation? Opinion polls showed a split nation, one half calling for reconciliation, the other warning that his re-entry would destabilize the monarchy forever. For every voice that saw a son seeking peace, another heard the echo of revenge. But to those paying close attention, something else was emerging, a pattern. Each of Harry's rare public appearances seemed to carry a deeper layer, a breadcrumb trail of meaning that hinted at unfinished family secrets. Perhaps it wasn't about returning to royal duties at all. Perhaps it was about revealing what had truly driven him away in the first place. Yet, even as the public debated his motives, the next revelation would shatter every assumption about what truly drove Harry to speak up now. As the royal aides scrambled for damage control, One discovery turned the conversation upside down, a sealed letter written by Queen Elizabeth II shortly before her passing. According to insiders, the contents directly referenced Harry's future role in the monarchy. For years, this letter had remained locked away in Windsor's archives, but its resurfacing, right after Harry's statement, seemed too perfect to be coincidence. The letter, whispered about for years by a few trusted courtiers, had been treated as little more than royal folklore. No one outside a tight circle had seen it, and fewer still dared to mention its rumoured contents. But now, in the middle of a storm, fueled by Harry's cryptic words, a leak emerged, one that claimed the Queen's final written note carried not just affection, but instruction. It allegedly spoke of a duty unfulfilled and paths not yet walked, phrases that left the palace shaken to its core. If true, it would mean that even in her final moments, the late Queen believed Harry's story with the monarchy was far from over. The discovery was more than symbolic. It was explosive. Within hours of the leak, the royal household moved swiftly to deny any knowledge, but insiders painted a different picture. Panic had gripped the corridors. Senior staff were reportedly summoned in emergency meetings, discussing how the letter could have resurfaced and who might have let it slip. The king, already wrestling with public scrutiny and familial strain, was said to have reacted with visible unease. To him, this wasn't just a document, it was a message from a mother, echoing from beyond the grave, one he could neither ignore nor control. What made the situation even more volatile was who confirmed its existence. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense demeanour and loyalty to her mother's wishes, allegedly admitted in private that the letter was real. According to a royal aide, she said, "It was meant for all of them, but especially for Harry." Those words spread like wildfire. If Anne had truly acknowledged its authenticity, it shattered any illusion that this was merely a rumour. Suddenly, the Queen's voice, silenced by time, was speaking louder than anyone in the palace. The public reaction was immediate and emotional. Crowds gathered outside royal estates, demanding that the palace release the letter in full. Commentators, historians, and journalists filled the airwaves, dissecting what it could mean. Was this the Queen's final plea for unity? Or was it a veiled directive to her son to right the wrongs she never could? Polls showed overwhelming support for transparency. People wanted the truth not just about the letter, but about the family's internal fractures it had quietly exposed. Behind closed doors, though, the family was far from united. Some insiders described the mood as borderline crisis. The king's advisors urged silence, insisting that acknowledging the letter would only give it more power. Camilla, whose position was already delicate amid public backlash, reportedly feared the letter would strengthen Harry's moral standing. William, ever protective of the institution, argued that the monarchy couldn't afford another emotional unraveling. But there was one voice missing from the debate: Harry's. He said nothing, yet his silence carried more weight than any speech. For those who knew him, it was clear he was waiting to see whether the palace would bury the truth again or finally confront it. Because if the Queen's letter truly existed, and if it said what many believed it did, then her final message could reshape not just Harry's future, but the monarchy's destiny. It could reveal that the Queen, even in her final days, saw in Harry a purpose the others had dismissed. A role not yet fulfilled, a journey not yet complete. The tension reached a fever pitch when whispers suggested the letter's resurfacing wasn't an accident at all. Some believed it had been deliberately released by someone loyal to the Queen's original intent, someone who wanted to remind the world that her vision for the monarchy went beyond bloodlines and titles. It was about humanity, redemption, and truth values Harry had once embodied before being cast out. But what no one saw coming was how this secret letter would pit the monarchy's future against its painful past, and how Harry himself would weaponize it. The moment Harry's words reached William, sources say his composure shattered. "He's done it again," William reportedly told a close friend. The wounds of their last confrontation reopened like they never healed. But, while the brothers clashed through silence and intermediaries, Catherine stepped in, determined to stop another royal fracture. What unfolded next revealed not just a family feud, but a battle for the soul of the monarchy itself. In the quiet corridors of Kensington, William's frustration boiled beneath his polished restraint. For years, he had tried to keep emotion out of duty, to separate brotherhood from the crown's unrelenting expectations. Yet this time, something inside him cracked. Harry's public remarks about unfinished royal business felt like a betrayal, a calculated move to control the narrative once again. William had always believed that private matters should remain private, that silence was strength. But to him, Harry's decision to speak to the world before speaking to his family wasn't just reckless, it was unforgivable. Behind the scenes, royal aides described William's mood as stormy but subdued, the kind of anger that simmered, quiet but dangerous. Those close to him say he feared that Harry's unpredictable actions could destabilize the very institution their late grandmother had spent her life protecting. If he returns, William reportedly confided, everything she built could crumble under the weight of his emotions. His concern wasn't merely personal, it was existential. The monarchy, already facing scrutiny, couldn't survive another public implosion. And yet, beneath that fear lay something raw, more human. A brother still hurting from words said years ago, and from the silence that followed. Catherine, ever the quiet peacemaker, watched the divide grow with an ache only she could articulate. She had witnessed the love between the brothers, seen their laughter in rare, unguarded moments, and now all she saw was distance. To her, this wasn't about titles or reputation, it was about healing. Determined to bridge the chasm, she reached out discreetly. Through mutual contacts, through subtle messages, she tried to open a line of dialogue. Her approach wasn't grand or public, it was deeply personal. Someone has to try, she reportedly said, because if they don't, the family won't survive this. But reconciliation, especially in the royal family, never comes without resistance. As Catherine reached for peace, whispers began to circulate. Whispers that Queen Camilla had quietly urged Charles to avoid any emotional entanglement with Harry until the timing was right. To William, this felt like manipulation. Camilla's growing influence within the palace was something he both respected and resented. Her counsel often carried weight with the king, and William feared that her cautious advice was meant less to protect the crown and more to preserve her own standing within it. Each move, each decision seemed to pull the family further apart. As weeks passed, the silence between the brothers became unbearable. But then came a glimmer of hope, a brief, unplanned video call initiated by Harry himself. It wasn't polished or scripted. It wasn't mediated by aides or advisors. For the first time in years, it was just William and Harry, face to face, voice to voice. What began with stiffness slowly gave way to something fragile honesty. Harry reportedly expressed regret for the noise, while William, his voice thick with emotion, admitted that he never stopped caring. The call ended, not in reconciliation, but in understanding, and that, for both of them, was enough to stir something long buried. Catherine, watching from afar, felt a cautious sense of relief. It wasn't over, but for the first time, it didn't feel impossible. She believed that time, compassion, and truth could repair what power and tradition had broken. Yet she also knew the royal world well enough to sense that peace never lasts long within its walls. The tides were shifting again quietly, powerfully, and something darker was waiting on the horizon. Because even as Catherine tried to mend what was broken, a new royal player entered the game, one who would turn reconciliation into chaos. Behind the polished smiles and royal etiquette, Queen Camilla was furious. According to insiders, she believed Harry's possible return would undo years of progress she had made beside the king. Determined to protect her influence, she reportedly initiated a quiet but ruthless counter-offensive, a campaign designed to remind the monarchy and the public who truly controlled the narrative inside Buckingham Palace. For Camilla, the sudden resurgence of Harry's name in royal conversations wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. For years, she had fought to cement her image as the steady force behind Charles's reign. the calm hand guiding the crown through modern storms. Yet with a few words, Harry had shifted the attention back to himself, reopening old debates about Diana, the monarchy, and the legitimacy of the woman now called Queen. Sources close to her claimed that what truly stung wasn't Harry's potential return, but the public sympathy that followed it. Polls began to show rising warmth toward Harry and Meghan, and subtle criticism of the monarchy's treatment of them. In Camilla's eyes, that shift threatened everything she had worked for. Her first move was private, but powerful. Behind closed doors, she confronted Charles directly, not as wife to husband, but as queen consort to the king. Insiders recall the tension was palpable. She reportedly accused him of being too soft, and warned that welcoming Harry back, even unofficially, would be seen as a betrayal of their shared effort to stabilize the monarchy after years of scandal. Charles, weary and torn, is said to have defended his son quietly, insisting that reconciliation didn't mean surrender. But Camilla's resolve was unshakable. "You can't fix the past by reopening it," she allegedly told him. It was both a warning and a plea, a reminder that their reign's strength depended on unity, not sentiment. Soon after, reports emerged of a confidential memo circulating among senior courtiers. It outlined how the palace should manage narratives surrounding Harry's public appearances and ensure that any discussion of royal reconciliation remained tightly controlled. Though never confirmed officially, the existence of such a document reflected a growing paranoia, a fear that Harry's every word could undo months of carefully curated image building. Those loyal to Camilla took subtle steps, distancing the king from Harry's ongoing story, steering press coverage toward royal engagements that painted stability and tradition, not turmoil. To the outside world, it looked like business as usual, the king smiling at engagements, Camilla beside him, gracious and composed. But behind that calm exterior, fractures were deepening. Charles was caught between two powerful forces: his wife's demand for loyalty and his paternal instinct to make peace with his son. Friends close to him say he grew quieter, more withdrawn, as if trapped between the duty he owed the crown and the love he still carried as a father. Every time the subject of Harry arose, the air thickened with unspoken tension. Meanwhile, whispers of a power crisis began to leak from the inside. Some courtiers loyal to the late Queen's memory questioned whether Camilla's growing influence was overshadowing the king himself. Others saw in her actions a necessary defense of the monarchy's stability. But one thing was undeniable: the unity of the royal household was fracturing under the weight of competing loyalties. The very structure that had survived wars, divorces, and scandals was now trembling because of a family's inability to forgive. And through it all, Camilla believed she was doing what needed to be done, preserving the monarchy from emotional chaos. Yet in her determination to silence the storm, she had overlooked one truth. There was a voice far stronger than her control, a presence that still lingered in every royal scandal, in every emotional reckoning, one that no title or strategy could ever bury. But as Camilla moved to silence the storm, she underestimated one force, the voice of a mother that never truly faded. Every royal scandal seems to carry one ghost: Diana. Her presence lingers, not in the marble halls or portraits, but in the moral compass of her sons. As the world watched the feud escalate, old clips and diaries resurfaced, painting a chilling parallel between Diana's struggle and Harry's rebellion. And suddenly, it wasn't about royal duty anymore. It was about who inherited her truth. The media seized on the moment like wolves sensing weakness. Archival interviews of Diana flooded television screens and social platforms, echoing through a generation that never forgot her pain. Her words, "There were 3 of us in this marriage," suddenly felt alive again, carrying a haunting relevance to the palace's current unrest. Commentators began to draw lines between the past and the present, between the woman who challenged the monarchy's silence and the son who seemed determined to finish what she started. The phrase, "speaking truth against the system," became a rallying cry once more, and this time, it wasn't Diana facing the storm, it was Harry. For Harry, the comparisons were both comforting and devastating. He had spent his adult life trying to preserve her memory while escaping the shadow it cast. But as the public turned his mother's legacy into a mirror for his own rebellion, it awakened something within him, a realization that perhaps his mission had never been about independence at all. Perhaps it was about redemption. Insiders close to Harry say he began to speak of his mother more frequently, describing her as the only person who truly understood what it meant to be trapped in a gilded cage. That sentiment resonated deeply with millions around the world, shifting the narrative from rebellion to righteousness. Public sympathy began to tilt in Harry's favor. Once criticized for abandoning his royal duties, he was now viewed by many as carrying his mother's torch, exposing the emotional costs of the monarchy's iron restraint. Newspapers that once branded him a traitor now spoke of him as a son reclaiming his mother's stolen dignity. The transformation of public perception terrified the establishment. Every reminder of Diana's compassion, defiance, and humanity eroded the monarchy's moral shield, forcing them to confront a truth they'd long tried to suppress. Diana had never truly left them. She lived on in the very rebellion they feared most. But within the family, her ghost stirred more than nostalgia. It provoked guilt, resentment, and division. For William, her legacy was both a blessing and a burden. He adored her memory, but he also carried the weight of preserving what she had fought against the institution itself. Friends of the prince said he felt trapped between two worlds, one ruled by love and empathy, and the other by duty and discipline. Each time the press compared him to his mother, he reportedly bristled, aware that her defiance was the very thing he was taught to control. The contrast between his brother's freedom and his own obligation began to carve a quiet ache inside him, one he could neither express nor escape. For Charles, the resurfacing of Diana's image reopened wounds that time had never fully healed. As clips of her laughter and pain filled the media, the king's public appearances were scrutinized for every flicker of discomfort. Those close to him said he became uncharacteristically withdrawn, often remarking that some ghosts never forgive. The guilt was inescapable. The world's empathy for Diana rekindled its suspicion of him, eroding years of careful rehabilitation. His silence, once seen as dignified, now felt like an admission of regret. And at the center of this storm stood Camilla, the woman who had spent 2 decades trying to escape the shadow of Diana's memory, only to find herself pulled back into it once more. As the late princess's old interviews dominated global headlines, Camilla's image suffered a brutal reversal. Her critics resurfaced, painting her as the perpetual intruder in Diana's unfinished story. Analysts noted a visible shift in public mood. The fairy tale crown she had finally secured was now slipping under the weight of old resentment. The Queen's advisors worked frantically to protect her reputation, but the damage was done. Once again, Diana's truth had rewritten the royal script. It became clear that this wasn't merely about history repeating itself, it was history reclaiming its voice. Diana's defiance had outlived her, seeping into the conscience of a new era. Harry's words, Charles's silence, William's restraint, and Camilla's unease, all of it revolved around the one presence none of them could escape. The people saw it too. For every scandal, every headline, every tear shed behind palace doors, Diana's memory lingered as the unspoken truth no royal decree could silence. But the spirit of Diana's defiance was only the beginning, because what happened next would thrust the entire royal institution into uncharted territory. As the storm intensified, King Charles reportedly made a private confession that stunned his closest advisors. He admitted, "I've made mistakes, ones that cost me both my sons." Those words, whispered behind closed doors, soon leaked into the press. For the first time, Charles wasn't defending the monarchy, he was mourning it. The world began to wonder, was this confession the first step toward a royal reconciliation, or the end of his reign? For months, the king had stood firm, maintaining the composure that his late mother once embodied. But behind the royal exterior was a man breaking under the weight of regret. His health, already a growing concern, had become a constant reminder of his own fragility and of the legacy he might leave behind. Those close to him described a noticeable shift. The once measured monarch had become quieter, reflective, almost haunted. He had spent his entire life preparing to rule, Yet the moment he grasped the crown, he realized that the price of leadership had been far higher than he ever anticipated. The crown had not only cost him his privacy, it had cost him peace with his sons. In the privacy of his study, Charles reportedly shared what aides described as one of the most vulnerable moments of his reign. "I have failed as a father," he confessed, his voice heavy with exhaustion. For decades, his devotion to duty had been absolute. Every decision, every appearance, every carefully worded speech was crafted in service to the institution. But somewhere in that lifelong pursuit of purpose, he had lost the intimacy of family. The monarchy had given him everything and taken everything from him in return. That truth, long buried beneath royal discipline, was now surfacing in whispers that carried across Britain. The palace staff was thrown into turmoil. Some argued the king's private words should remain sacred, a moment of humanity, not politics. Others believed the public deserved to hear it, that perhaps showing the man behind the crown could heal a monarchy increasingly viewed as distant and disconnected. But when the quote leaked, "I've made mistakes that cost me both my sons," it was too late. The world had already heard his heartbreak, and sympathy began to replace criticism. For the first time in years, the public saw Charles not as a ruler trapped in protocol, but as a father longing for reconciliation. William's reaction, however, was far more complicated. Those close to him revealed a deep sense of conflict. On one hand, he admired his father's honesty, perhaps even envied it. But on the other, he feared it might be perceived as weakness, especially when the monarchy's stability depended on confidence. He too had been shaped by duty, by expectations, by the same machinery that had driven his parents apart. When he heard his father's words, he reportedly told Catherine, "He's right, but it's too late." It was a confession of his own unspoken, but heavy with meaning. Meanwhile, Harry's silence spoke volumes. The press interpreted his lack of response as indifference, but those who knew him saw something else: hesitation. He had long wanted acknowledgement from his father, not as a monarch, but as a man. Now that it had finally come, he didn't know how to receive it. Pride and pain collided within him. Could he trust a father who had so often chosen the crown over his children? Or was this a rare moment of truth that might finally bridge the divide? The world waited for his reaction, but it never came. His silence became the story, a haunting echo of the distance that still defined their relationship. Inside the palace, the atmosphere grew fragile. Courtiers whispered about the king's emotional fatigue, his diminishing energy, his growing talk of legacy. Some even speculated that he was contemplating an unthinkable act, stepping back, not out of weakness, but out of love. The idea of abdication, once unimaginable, began to float through royal corridors. Could Charles, the man who waited a lifetime for the throne, be willing to surrender it in the name of unity? To some, it sounded like redemption. To others, it sounded like surrender. Still, in his quiet moments, Charles seemed less concerned with legacy and more with peace. "If stepping away brings them together," he reportedly told an aide, "then perhaps that will be my greatest act as king." Those words carried both humility and resignation, a father finally realizing that the crown, no matter how heavy, meant nothing without the love of his sons. The confession that began as a whisper had become a turning point, a rare fracture in the stone walls of royal perfection. And just when it seemed the monarchy might begin to heal, a secret meeting in London threatened to undo every fragile step toward peace. They thought it would stay hidden, a quiet, late-night meeting between Harry, William and Charles at Clarence House. No aides, no courtiers, no Camilla. But someone leaked it. The next morning, the media exploded with headlines claiming the royal reunion. Yet insiders tell a different story, one of tears, confrontation, and a shocking revelation that left even Charles speechless. This was not reconciliation. It was a reckoning. The meeting had been months in the making, orchestrated quietly and deliberately. Sources say it was Catherine who pushed for it, believing it was the only way forward before the monarchy tore itself apart from within. Her influence was subtle but undeniable. Through trusted intermediaries, she persuaded both William and Charles that the time for silence had ended and that the only way to find peace was to face the truth together. But when Harry agreed to come, it wasn't in the spirit of forgiveness. It was in search of answers. The atmosphere that night was reportedly thick with unspoken emotion. For the first time in years, the three men who defined the modern monarchy sat together without cameras, without protocol, without anyone to filter their words. And what began as cautious civility quickly descended into raw confrontation. Insiders claim it was William who spoke first, his voice breaking as he apologized for the years of bitterness and distance. "I didn't protect you when I should have," he reportedly admitted. It was the kind of vulnerability the monarchy had long buried the heir to the throne, acknowledging his own failings not as a prince, but as a brother. For a moment, the silence that followed seemed to promise healing. But Harry's reply shattered that illusion. Calm yet cutting, he told them, "I won't return unless the truth is told." The words landed like thunder. What truth? The question lingered, but Harry didn't hesitate. He laid out years of grievances, the manipulation of narratives, the half-truths leaked to the press, and the quiet protection certain members of the family had received while others were sacrificed for image. He spoke of pain disguised as protocol, of loyalty repaid with betrayal. Then, he mentioned the one name that silenced the room, Camilla. What followed was a revelation that even the most loyal courtiers hadn't anticipated. Harry reportedly accused Camilla of orchestrating a subtle campaign to undermine him and Meghan through controlled press leaks, all to secure her public position. For Charles, hearing his wife's name tied to such claims was devastating. At first, he denied it, insisting that she had been misunderstood, that whatever mistakes had been made were in the past. But Harry pressed harder. He claimed to have seen communications, briefings, exchanges, insinuations, all pointing to deliberate efforts to protect Camilla's reputation at the expense of his own family's. According to those briefed on the meeting, Charles was visibly shaken. It wasn't anger that consumed him, it was disbelief. For decades, he had fought to rehabilitate Camilla's image, to transform her from the shadow of scandal into a queen accepted by the people. Now, that legacy was under threat from within his own bloodline. The weight of that truth hung in the air like a sentence too painful to speak. William, caught between his father's silence and his brother's accusations, broke down again. He pleaded for calm, urging both men to look beyond the headlines and remember the humanity beneath the crown. "We're losing ourselves," he reportedly said. "We're losing everything." But Harry stood firm. For him, forgiveness was impossible without honesty. The monarchy could not move forward, he declared, if it continued to bury its sins beneath ceremony. As dawn broke over London, the meeting ended without resolution. There were no embraces, no declarations of unity, only exhaustion, and the faint hope that something had been set in motion. Yet within hours, word of the meeting leaked. Anonymous sources fed the story to the press, spinning it as a joyful reunion and the dawn of reconciliation. The palace released no statement, allowing the illusion to take hold, but those who knew the truth understood what had really occurred that night. It wasn't a reunion, it was a confrontation that left deeper scars than before. In the aftermath, speculation swirled. Some claimed the leak came from within the palace itself, designed to mask the chaos with a facade of peace. Others suggested it was deliberate, a way to test public reaction to the idea of a united royal family once more. Whatever the truth, the result was the same. Another storm, another fracture, another reminder that even in private, the royal family's wounds could never remain hidden for long. And just as the monarchy seemed poised to collapse under its own secrets, Harry made one final move, one that no one saw coming. After weeks of chaos, Harry finally broke his silence in full. Standing before cameras, his voice calm, but his eyes unyielding, he declared, "My home is where truth lives." With those words, he didn't just close a chapter, he rewrote it. His decision sent shockwaves through the monarchy, the media, and the millions who once doubted him. But behind his calm demeanor one haunting question remained: is the royal war truly over? The world had been waiting for this moment, a moment of clarity after months of tension, speculation, and emotional fallout. But when Harry finally spoke, it wasn't with anger or vengeance. His tone carried something deeper, a quiet strength born from years of pain and reflection. He made it clear that while his heart remained tied to the family he was born into, his loyalty now belonged to the one he had built himself. He refused to define his future by titles or tradition, choosing instead to define it by truth. He said he would not return to the monarchy in any official capacity, but he would not turn his back on it either. For the first time, his decision wasn't about exile or rebellion. It was about balance, a declaration that he could honor his roots without being bound by them. In his statement, Harry spoke of the cycles of silence that had haunted generations of royals, the unspoken pain, the secrets traded for appearances, and the emotional distance disguised as duty. He vowed to break that pattern for the sake of his children, promising that they would grow up knowing love without conditions and truth without fear. It was more than a personal resolution. It was a manifesto against the very culture that had defined his life. The crowd, listening, fell silent, sensing that beneath his calm words lay the culmination of years of inner warfare, a man who had finally chosen peace, but on his own terms. The reaction was immediate and global. Some hailed him as courageous, a man who had found his purpose outside the constraints of monarchy. Others accused him of grandstanding, of using the family's pain as a platform. Yet even his critics could not deny the emotional gravity of his words. Social media flooded with messages of support from those who saw in him the reflection of their own struggle, the battle to stand for truth in a world that rewards silence. For once, Harry wasn't running from the storm. He was standing in it, unmoved. Within the palace, the impact was equally seismic. King Charles, despite immense pressure from advisors to remain neutral, released a brief but powerful statement expressing a father's enduring love. Those 6 words carried more weight than any political response ever could. It was the first public acknowledgement of their fractured but surviving bond. William, though silent, was seen as contemplative, perhaps realizing that his brother's defiance had forced a conversation that could no longer be postponed. But while some within the royal institution began to talk of reform, others doubled down on preservation, fearing that Harry's independence was weakening the very foundation of the crown. As for Camilla, her retreat from public engagement spoke volumes. The backlash that had followed weeks of speculation about her role in the internal chaos had taken its toll. Insiders described her as visibly withdrawn, her confidence shaken by the resurgence of old narratives she thought had long been buried. For a woman who had fought for decades to be accepted, the return of public hostility was both painful and familiar, and though Charles tried to protect her, the distance between them seemed to grow not out of resentment, but exhaustion. The storm had left no one untouched. In the days that followed, attention shifted back to the monarchy itself, to what Harry's words truly meant for its future. For years, the royal family had represented continuity, the unwavering symbol of tradition in a changing world. But now, one of its own had redefined what legacy meant. Through his vulnerability, Harry had reminded the world that the monarchy was not made of marble or gold. It was made of people, flawed and fragile, and perhaps, for the first time in modern history, that humanity had become its most valuable inheritance. In the quiet aftermath, as the media frenzy began to fade, Harry's final act became clear. He had not sought revenge or redemption, he had sought freedom. And in doing so, he had given voice to something larger than himself. The monarchy would continue, but it would never again be the same. For the echo of his words of truth over silence, of love over protocol, would forever linger in the halls of power he left behind. And as the cameras faded, one truth lingered. The crown may endure, but the real power lies in the voice that dared to break the silence. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.